Jensen?
Pendant dewa malu chungwene, Jere Siwa Tenzin Gyatso yi, Shabe Site Partu Tengu.
Today is the 17th of November 2025. Is the time when His Holiness, the Great 14th Dalai Lama, who is the embodiment of compassion and the leader of all the Tibetans. So this is a time when we celebrate the 75th anniversary of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's assumption of spiritual and temporal leadership of Tibet.
To His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama for his boundless compassion, kindness, and visionary leadership, we are gathered here today on November 17, 2025, in the courtyard of Tenzin Gyatso to celebrate the 75th anniversary of His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama's assumption of temporal and spiritual leadership of the great nation of Tibet.
Tenge Kushen Pende Sigon Chone, Pögegap Chembu, Gedar Kayin Sutenkap, Pögi Dögar Sopan, Narul Tanche, Pögegap Chembu, Galutan, Gagar Galu Pögu.
The celebration will begin with hoisting of Tibetan national flag by Honorable Sikyong Pempa Tsering. Members of Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts will lead the rendition of Tibetan national anthem and Indian national anthem.
offering of
Timshiba Chewa Cho ta Pende Pemi Ma Chidu Choto Cho Pende Sigyon Cho Che ne Mente Tensum Degbu Shugyu ta Kapter Tente Soja Desi Degbu Shugyu.
Honorable Chief Justice Commissioner, Honorable Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, and the Honorable Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration will offer Mendel Tensum, a symbolic, auspicious offering representing the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha.
Teta Chabji Yu Pelop Zingyon Sobe Kapkon Tenlop Ka Duingi Lopsur Ta Petukim de Mussoorie Pekim Gyagar Ta Payu Ki Nilop Che Lopsur Tumon Ki Kadin Jeden Sengto Chokchon Ki Chokso Chisur Tashi Namge Lane Mente Tensum Degbu Shugyu Ta Genkurwa Kaji ne Jega Shugyu.
Tashin Namgyal, President of the Gratitude Event Organizing Committee and a former member of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, will lead the offering of Mendel Tensum on behalf of the alumni of Tibetan schools in India and Nepal.
Tuchina. Tichela Pende Sigyon Cho ne Kashaki Sungshe Nangyu.
I request Honorable Sikyong to deliver the Kashak statement.
We are gathered here today to celebrate the historic day of great auspiciousness, marking the 75th anniversary of the day when His Holiness Dalai Lama assumed the spiritual and temporal leadership of Tibet. So we requested His Holiness office coinciding with our observation of the 90th birthday of His Holiness, as well as the year of gratitude. We have arranged this celebration. November 15th, 1950 was the day when His Holiness assumed the political and spiritual leadership of Tibet. So, with due respect to His Holiness, I would like to offer my greetings to all of you, and particularly gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Since the first Tibetan king, Nyirezembo, and the gradual political leadership in Tibet, Tibet has many wonderful emperors. During the king Tenzin Gyatso, Tibet was able to invent his first script. Then in 9th century, even though Tibet dispersed into smaller territories, it was a period of turmoil erupted in Tibet's neighborhood country, China, where it was a period of turmoil erupted in Tibet's neighboring country, China, where in 1949 the Communist Party of China seized control of political authority over the mainland. And on the 1st of October that year, the party proclaimed the newly founding of the People's Republic of China. Following it, on the 30th of November 1949, Mao Zedong carried out the arrangement of troops and launched an onslaught into Tibet. Chamdo was overrun by the Chinese People's Liberation Army, and all the military officers and civilian officials of the Tibetan government stationed in Chamdo were imprisoned. The development brought into sharp focus the great disparity in everything from population to military power between the Communist government of China and the religious steeped nation of Tibet. Besides, it was time when there was a tribe among different factions of high-ranking Tibetan government officials due to internal power and power struggle and conflict. Such was the time when the political situation in Tibet was in extreme crisis and was extremely precarious. Amid this turmoil, the entire Tibetan populace, both lay and monastic, fervently beseeched His Holiness Dalai Lama to assume his political and religious authority. And His Holiness were left no choice but to accede to the prayers. And so, on the 17th of November 1950, although only 16 years of age by Tibetan calendar reckoning, His Holiness the Dalai Lama assumed authority as the temporal head and spiritual leader of Tibet. His Holiness newly established a reform office and a judicial affair office with the aim of strengthening Tibet's political stability and ensuring the happiness of his people. In 1954, His Holiness the Dalai Lama accepted an invitation from the government of China and visited Beijing and other places in the country. And he met with a number of Chinese leadership, including Mao Zedong. Finally, as this is he's keeping his statement, so finally I would like to pray that His Holiness live long for the benefit of entire sentient beings, particularly the Tibetan people, particularly for the benefit of Tibetan people.
Assuming the political and spiritual leadership of Tibet way back in 1950, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Ms. Alestia Zikova, who is the ambassador of Czech Republic in Delhi. Thank you very much for being the chief guest today. And we also have many Indian friends, including the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mr. Chaudhary ji, and all the security personnel who have worked in the private office over the last so many years. And we have also the liaison officers who have served in the private office with His Holiness for many years. Many of them are here. Please extend a very warm welcome to all of them. As we keep saying, if it is not for the government and people of India, we do not exist. So today it is an occasion for us, on behalf of His Holiness, the Tibetans inside and Tibetans outside, to express our gratitude to our host nation, the Government of India, both at the central level, irrespective of whatever political party you come from. Consecutive governments of the Government of India and the state governments have extended all the help and support for the Tibetan community here, which makes us one of the very unique Tibetan democratic polity that exists in exile. So thank you very much for coming here and gracing this occasion. On this auspicious occasion marking the 75th year of His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama's assumption of spiritual and temporal leadership over the great nation of Tibet on 17th November 1950, corresponding to the 8th day of the 10th month of the Iron Tiger year of the 16th Rabjung. The Kashak, on behalf of the Tibetans in and outside Tibet, offers its heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, the Apostle of World Peace, the Supreme Patriarch of the Buddhist world, the protector and refuge of the Tibetan people, and the embodiment of Avalokiteshvara. We offer our boundless prayers for His Holiness to live for eons for the benefit of all sentient beings. A unified political empire of Tibet in the land of snow was gradually formed, beginning with its first Tibetan emperor, Nyarisembo, in 2017 BC. During the reign of the three Dharma kings, the rule of the Tibetan Empire reached its zenith, extending over vast regions of Asia. In that period, the Tibetan script was newly created based on the Indian Gupta script, and the pure Buddhist teachings of the great Nalanda tradition were brought into Tibet and spread throughout the land. The military might of the Tibetan Empire saw the invasion of the Chinese capital of Chang'an, present-day Xi'an, and the overthrow of the then Tang Emperor. Although the Tibetan Empire disintegrated in the 9th century and its power declined, Tibet's territorial integrity remained intact. For instance, the Tibetan people mounted an effective defense when Bakhtiar Khilji launched a campaign to invade Tibet from northeastern India in 1206. From the time of the Drogon Choge Phakpa to the Ganden Photang, a priest-patron relationship was established with the Mongol, the Ming, and the Manchu rulers who ruled over China. The Tibetan spiritual and temporal leaders and high lamas of Tibet turned the wheel of Dharma for successive rulers of China. high-ranking officials and subjects, positively influencing them through the Buddha's teachings. In the early 20th century, Tibet fell into weakened state when the Muslim warlord Ma Bufang invaded Amdo, the Manchu general Tawarfang invaded Kham, and the British invaded Central Tibet. After the Chinese Nationalist Party, Kuomintang, seized power in 1911, they progressively annexed numerous regions in Amdo and Kham and engaged in repeated armed border confrontations with the Tibetan government. In 1949, after the establishment of the Communist Government of the People's Republic of China, many areas of the Amdo and Kham regions were forcibly occupied. In October 1950, the People's Liberation Army captured Chamdo through a three-pronged attack, defeating the Tibetan army and rendering Tibet incapable of mounting an armed defense. With the indifference of the international community and both the people and the land of Tibet at the brink of destruction, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, at just 15 years of age, assumed spiritual and temporal leadership of Tibet. With unparalleled courage, His Holiness the Dalai Lama worked tirelessly for over 8 years to negotiate with the People's Republic of China within the framework of the coerced 17-point agreement, striving to protect Tibetan lives from the armed threat of the People's Liberation Army and to preserve Tibet's unique religious and cultural heritage. However, with the complete disregard and continued violation of the said agreement by the PRC's government, His Holiness was compelled to go into exile. Upon arrival in exile in the Holy Land of India, His Holiness formally repudiated the so-called 17-point agreement signed under duress, declaring it null and void. Since the 1970s, His Holiness proposed the middle way policy to resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict, which the Central Tibetan Administration continues to pursue. The sublime life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the great Bodhisattva, exemplified through his tireless efforts in fulfilling the four principal commitments and his immeasurable kindness transcend all expression. Finally, on this auspicious convergence of the 85th anniversary of His Holiness' enthronement, the 75th year of His Holiness' assumption of spiritual and temporal leadership of Tibet, and the celebration marking His Holiness' 90th birthday, we offer our heartfelt prayers for the long life of His Holiness, the great 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet, and the continuation of his enlightened activities for eons to come.
공투지나 디젤라 벤데 페미마 지디 초조초네 페미마 지딜 현조기 송시난규
I request Honorable Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile to deliver the statement of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile.
Dison sonjek genji sharshin chodeng du genjin jone hlado jebin rowa yongjin gwansho tsunda manjiba shenoro konsa shongwen jangwo thomjen chenji zeba chimbi shabla gosum kisha donje
with probably he might read his statement in English, so I'm not going to translate here.
Zezo lezur number Zejo Pemi Lobda Kage Lobzur number Yen Kunde number ton Mozo Jela Pemi Moshindi Lenzo Ge Tsopshine Somji Tashi Deles Shuayin Harji Siki Zujen Jakin Niji Ronzu Pejil Hakal Sherezi on Me Zus Shamba Consum Chiji Jabo Dide Hide Tebe Pemi Yonja Lana Maybe Uti Shino Konsa Shongan Jayi Ombo Kunchen Chugiwa Chembon Choki Pe Jacob Luzon Chusi Jin Zekuro Nweso Dagri Yede Terim Melo Shebo Denjo Tengan Korvi Lojiji Shonrob no Tenyi Dembe, Kazongi Nemo Hin, Teyon Jiketo, Gondun Deja Yabala, Papa Nomne Drogin, Jason Batara, Dejan Dejin, Tene Jimmy Chicken, Tribune Nomro to me, Pembon Jason Zinje, Peje Toma Nyadi Zambone Zone, Churchill Meven Namson Town, Tribune Loben Number, Jao Country Region Town, Tacha Dacha Namjin, Gwensho Kadin Dameba, Jancho Chugiba Chambo Koni, Ben Dome Zongi Yuji, Tatsira Tonto, Yop Cheshon Teretan, Yum Sanam Somo Nichi, Seso, some Yindo Shawara Zonkin, Teje Yonzi Nambi Tune, Chesho Jehoba Honir Senyetan, Shortun Zomni Chopsi Neboton, Sergi Lao Tonon Z, Duke Ter Tenzin Jacob Janatu, Tizi Shonte, Shilo Tidon Guja Yetu Hegolo, Jana Mahio Content Tanki, Jana Kamsa Chimi Sion Zonhi, Lotte Shinda Chubi Titini, Jana Mimo Shindin Jacob Sanzu Shebi, Yonchop Sadapel, Shilo Tidon Guja Yetu Hego, Dawa Chuji Bitini Tasun Yin, Mao Zedongi, Pella Tenzi Shaji, Mada Yonsu Dide, Punjukin got some here, Pe Chamdo, Jana Tindo Maser Lato Shorne, Chamdor Yepi, Pe Yongi, Hida, Penny Yonzo, Jai Zan to Chit. Tidre Jana, Mahio Se Yonton, Pe Cheden Jacob Nichi, Mejaton, Tokyo Content, Heva Chambo Yepi, Nedon La Son, Page Shit up Nebone, Hajon Kanye Chambo Hino Lung. So Yene Page Tori Mini Shoga Warje, Noki Onjin Truze Ganda Shonhi, Page Chopsi Nedon Chen Yatawaton, Chen Zadak Duzu Jacob, Pembo Haden Medeyone.
So this is a statement in English, the one he is reading, so I'll read from that. It was a period when turmoil... Okay. And so on the 17th of November in 1915, although 16 years of age by Tibetan calendar reckoning, His Holiness assumed authority as the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet. His Holiness newly established a reform office and a judicial affair office with the aim of strengthening Tibet's political stability and ensuring the happiness of its people. In the year 1954, His Holiness Dalai Lama accepted an invitation from the government of China and visited Beijing and other places in India. And he had met with a number of Chinese leaders, including Mao Zedong. In 1956, His Holiness visited India at the invitation to attend the commemoration of the 2005 anniversary of the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha Shakyamuni. During this visit, he undertook pilgrimages to several sacred sites connected with the event. In Delhi, His Holiness met a number of leaders, including Prime Minister Pandit Nehru, and discussed with them the political situation in Tibet at that time. He also learned about the strength of India's democratic system and other values. Afterwards, His Holiness returned to Tibet and for several consecutive years continued to make sincere and friendly effort to foster harmonious relations with the government of China in hope of achieving peaceful coexistence. However, all such efforts ultimately proved futile. China has coerced Tibet into signing the so-called 17-point agreement in 1951, only to later disregard and violate it entirely. In 1958, His Holiness took his Geshe degree test at the 3 seats of monasteries in 1959 and took the final examination of Geshe Haramba during the annual Great Prayer Festival in Chokan Temple in the presence of tens of thousands of monks. He won the highest level praise from many scholars and his friends, but the schedule of His Holiness were very hectic in those days. Nevertheless, the Chinese persisted in asking him to attend a theatrical show at their military camp, and with the result, a visit was finally scheduled to take place on the 10th of March. The Chinese government then sought to impose several conditions during the visit, including that he be accompanied only by 2 or 3 personal bodyguards and they should come completely unarmed. This was clearly a threat to his personal safety. Acting with spontaneous courage, people from all the 3 provinces of Tibet living in Lhasa turned in strength to surround the Nobulinga Palace, the summer palace where His Holiness was staying at that time, to provide him security and protest against the action of the government of China. This day has since come to be commemorated as Tibetan National Uprising Day. After that, on the 16th, the Chinese army began firing artillery shells in the direction of the Nobulinga Palace. This led His Holiness Dalai Lama to leave the palace on the night of the 17th of March 1959, accompanied by his attendants and members of the Kashak, his cabinet, to flee Lhasa into exile. Following his exile, His Holiness struck the international media in Dispur, Assam, on the 18th of April, during which he accused Chinese communist-ruled China of carrying out an unarmed aggression against the independent nation of Tibet. He disavowed the so-called Tibetan Agreement and made several other pronouncements as well. Afterward, His Holiness took up residence in Mussoorie, where he newly set up the Tibetan government in exile, including with some government departments. His Holiness Dalai Lama later relocated to Dharamsala and over time newly established Tibet's religious centers, settlement schools, and likewise other centers of knowledge, culture, handicrafts, and so forth, fulfilling a long-held vision. His Holiness established the Tibetan Parliament in exile in 1960, and with members elected by representatives of all religious and regional groups. Through this, he transformed the Tibetan system of governance into a modern democratic entity. The government of China has been implementing both soft and harsh policies aimed at undermining the religion, culture, language, ethnicity, and ecological environment of Tibet. However, thanks to the tireless efforts made in exile, especially through the compassionate activities of His Holiness Dalai Lama, Tibet's religion, culture, language, and heritage have been successfully revived. Millions of people around the world have benefited from His Holiness' efforts to raise awareness of Tibet's spiritual and cultural tradition. His promotion of dialogue between Buddhism and science, his emphasis on importance recognizing the oneness of humanity, and so forth. In particular, His Holiness teaching on cultivating compassion as a means to develop inner peace and mutual trust have touched countless lives. His turning of the wheel of Dharma for the followers of Buddhism continues uninterrupted to this day. Alongside the conferment of 34 great cultural empowerments across the world, the political activities and religious works carried by His Holiness Dalai Lama have been truly remarkable. His Holiness has undertaken countless weighty efforts towards resolving just cause of Tibet and in other fields. Apart from the engaging with the government in India for this purpose, His Holiness succeeded in having the United Nations General Assembly adopting 3 resolutions on Tibet, which took in 1959, 61, and 65. In 1967, His Holiness Dalai Lama undertook his first visit to Japan. Since then, he has traveled numerous times to great many countries and worlds. His Holiness held meetings with their leaders, including top political. In the case of the United States of America, His Holiness' efforts have yielded the adoption of legislation on Tibet on successive occasions by the Congress. Likewise, his efforts have also led to the adoption of numerous resolutions and other measures on Tibet by the European Parliament as well as parliaments, governments and others in numerous countries. It is particularly noteworthy that by re-establishing contact with the government of China and adopting a mutually beneficial approach, His Holiness enabled delegations of Tibetans in exile to undertake a series of fact-finding visits to Tibet. As a result, Tibetans in Tibet and those in exile were able to visit one another. Likewise, from 2002, 9 rounds of Sino-Tibetan talks were held. Nevertheless, due to the deeply ingrained mistrust of the Chinese leadership, these talks did not yield meaningful progress towards a positive resolution of the Sino-Tibetan conflict. Therefore, on this occasion, we reiterate our call on the leaders of the government of China to make sincere efforts to resolve the Sino-Tibetan conflict during the lifetime of His Holiness Dalai Lama. His Holiness has based his approach on the struggle for the just cause of Tibet on non-violent means. In countries across the world, he has provided guidance with his teachings on love and compassion, leadership and peaceful means for resolving issues and so forth. And with the result, he has earned universal recognition as a true embodiment of love and compassion and as a champion of world peace, including with the world's most prestigious award for peace, the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1989, His Holiness has been recognized with a total of close to 1,000 awards and honors thus so far. The 4 commitments made by His Holiness on his lifelong mission has been embraced and acted on by people in countries around the world, making his work in these and other fields a truly unparalleled achievement worthy of utmost admiration. It is entirely thanks to the deep kindness and grace of His Dalai Lama that all different religious traditions of Tibet and the entire people of the 3 provinces, distinguished by their sharing Tsamba eating culture heritage, have stood united as one, enabling the spread of the awareness of the Tibetan issue across the globe. We accordingly wish to take the opportunity to provide by this momentous occasion to express infinite heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama on behalf of all the Tibetan people. On this momentous occasion, we wish to express our heartfelt gratitude to Government of People of India as well as to everyone in the United States, Europe, and around the world who have continued to support the cause of Tibet.
Gratitude Event Organizing Committee, former member of the Tibetan Parliament in exile, Mr. Tenzin Gyatso, to make introductory remarks and offer the gratitude memento to His Holiness.
Country Rabe Kovi Shingamsu, Pentan Dewa Mali, Jovene, Cheresiwa, Tenzin Gyatso, Shabe, Side Padu, Dangerous, Unsubetone, Saji Sishi Tsuji, Consil Lamenande, Zamni Shidi, Tebun Chembo, Pemayun, Dichi Jamne, Turab Nichi, Petumba, Chino Consa Jangun, Yaya Tamchi Chinchi, Seba Chembo Chola, Goson Kupa Chembo, Kuchata, Pemidinzuchi, Mansu Kawason, Zezo Namba. Kundu Nandan, Dube, Tenyin Lauda Katan, Virginia Jeju Lobsur, Jache Mimachela, Kushin Zazi, Samdi Tashi del Shudi. Terenge Nimondi, Chiton Gujanga, Tamba, Chinda Chuji, Sejuduni, Chino Consa, Jango Chamber Cho, Ki, Perji Lunichi, Chelsea, Tungi, Jeni, Milo Rupu, Dunju Tunga Kobe.
To Holston Dalai Lama, holder of the White Lotus, victor over the 4 Maras, efficient protector of all the Tibetans, great champion of world peace, teachers of 21st century, omniscient, great, compassionate refuge, respectful greetings to the teachers and students of Tibetan Children's Village, along with parents, staff, the general public, and affectionate greetings to the general public, affectionate greetings. Today marks the momentous 75th anniversary of that day when His Holiness Dalai Lama assumed both temporal and spiritual leadership of Tibet on November 17, 1950. At that time, with China invading Tibet from the east and threatening to destroy Tibet's political institutions, the entire Tibetan people unanimously petitioned to His Holiness Dalai Lama, though only 16, to assume full political leadership of Tibet. This became one of the most significant events in Tibetan history. Therefore, today is a special and important day that all Tibetan people should commemorate and celebrate with reverence after His Holiness assumed political leadership despite his sincere efforts to achieve peaceful coexistence between Tibet and China. The Chinese communists did the opposite, intensify military operation inside Tibet. This led to the Great 14th Dalai Lama uprising, Great Tibetan Uprising on March 10th, 1915. As Chinese military aggression in Lhasa grew more severe every day, each day, His Holiness was forced to escape to preserve the Tibet's So His Holiness was forced to escape into exile. Upon arriving in exile, His Holiness immediately focused on providing care and support for the small number of Tibetans who have followed him, while simultaneously establishing schools for their children and attending to the education and upbringing of young people. He provided educational opportunities for monks regardless of their sects. Though there were many urgent political matters requiring attention during that situation, His Holiness considered the education of Tibetan in exile in both traditional and modern knowledge to be of paramount importance. On March 3rd, 1960, he established the first school in Mussoorie, personally providing all funds for this school's administration and maintenance. For the school's teaching staff, he sent several individuals, including his elder sister Tsering Doma Takla, to India to train as qualified teachers. As number of newly arrived Tibetan children in India increased and they gradually gathered in Dharamsala, the first school became insufficient, necessitating the purchase of permanent facilities. His Holiness personally provided funds to purchase most of the lands where the Mussoorie Permanent School now stands. Subsequently, he established Tibetan schools for Tibetan children from Kham and Tsang region in Simla, Bir, Dalhousie, with all operational costs provided by His Holiness private office. Following this tradition, with the establishment of the Central School for Tibetan CST schools, His Holiness graciously founded 4 more Tibetan schools. When His Holiness told the Indian government that since Tibetan people have their own written language and culture. Separate schools for Tibetan children were necessary. India responded that while it would have been more inconvenient to send children to Indian schools since there were already schools accommodating many Tibetan schools in India, because Tibetan children were the foundation of that city, they would make every effort to assist. The Indian government then established the CTSA and beyond. The 4 permanent schools already founded created additional permanent schools, providing many Tibetan children with opportunities for traditional and modern education. While the traditional education system in monasteries and other institutions inside Tibet was very well developed due to lack of modern education facility, even though the Indian teachers taught modern subjects like science and mathematics in these permanent schools, there was an absolutely necessity for textbook to teach Tibetan culture, Buddhist philosophy, history in the Tibetan language. Through the indispensable efforts, the textbook production center was established. Qualified teachers trained in modern pedagogy were recruited to develop comprehensive curriculum teaching Tibetan culture, history, Buddhist philosophy alongside modern subjects. Meanwhile, for Tibetan refugee parents, road construction work was their means of survival, requiring them to walk on road throughout the year. This left many orphans, destitute children at great risk with difficulties in care and upbringing. In 1960, His Holiness established the Tibetan Children's Village in Dharamsala to care for these children, asking his elder sister Sringdoma to assume administrative responsibility, with his younger sister General Pema taking over that role later. In 1962, when a Tibetan Children's Village was established in Mussoorie, he asked his elder sister Sringdoma Takla to assume responsibility. His cousin Sringdoma Takla to assume responsibility there as well. His private office continued to provide all funding and support for the children's village. As Tibetan settlements were gradually established throughout India, His Holiness founded day schools in every settlement so their children and parents would not have to be separated by long distance. He also established day schools in Tibetan communities so that at one point there were about 70 schools for Tibetan refugees in India and Nepal and Bhutan, providing modern education to many Tibetan children. For the first time in Tibetan history, this achieved non-universal literacy. Tibetan in exile achieved near universal literacy among Tibetan refugees, entirely through His Holiness efforts and generosity. His Holiness took special interest in the educational development of the permanent schools in India, visiting them repeatedly and presiding over major graduation ceremonies, providing guidance and directions for educational advancements. While the permanent schools in India have to follow the Indian national curriculum framework for their basic structure and teaching, His Holiness instructed the Ministry of Education and the Tibetan Administration that science, mathematics, and other modern subjects should be taught in Tibetan language. Following this guidance and vision, the Tibetan Children's Village initiated a project to create textbooks teaching modern subjects in Tibetan. Gradually, in accordance with His Holiness instructions and intentions, under the direction of Department of Education, new Tibetan language textbooks and teaching materials for elementary and middle school science, mathematics, and social science were developed, marking enormous contribution to raising the standard of the Tibetan written language. Another of His Holiness' great benefactions. In summary, due to the benefits of His Holiness foreign Dalai Lama establishing modern education for Tibetan children, despite Tibetan people having to live in exile for over 60 years, whatever changed from generation to generation in terms of administration, educational centers, or cultural preservation, he enabled their continuity. In particular, he provided care comparable to that of their own parents for the many destitute orphaned children who arrived from Tibet without parents or relatives, enabling them to grow into responsible members of Tibetan society. This was purely through His Holiness' compassionate care. In 1960, with Tibetan refugee parents having to work for their survival, leaving them barely enough time to meet their children annually during holidays, let alone take responsibility for their upbringing. The fact that there were many here today and that many students who have graduated from the permanent schools and both children's villages who could not be present received complete education opportunities from many elementary through higher education and became responsible members of exiled Tibetan society in civil servants serving in positions equal to our contemporaries worldwide. It's entirely due to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's effort and beneficence. Therefore, on behalf of permanent schools in India, Nepal, and Bhutan, both Children's Village, Tibetan Children's Village, TCV, and Mussoorie represent this commemorative flower offering to His Holiness, the two lotus petals in the hands of noble Avalokiteshvara among the snow-line people of Tibet represent His Holiness' kindness in protecting Tibetan people from left and right over the past 75 years. This book and the lamp represent the traditional and modern education bestowed upon Tibetan children without distinction. Both the Indian and Buddhist governments have also honored His Holiness Great 14th Dalai Lama with special recognitions for his contributions to Tibetan children's education. Additionally, we would like to express special gratitude and acknowledgement to the past, present ministers of education, teachers, students, parents, staffs, and others who have worked with dedication and devotion to provide training and education to many Tibetan children. The significance of the symbolic award among the countless, boundless, and inconceivable deeds of the noble and supreme lotus holder Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha entrusted with the land of snow for the benefit of beings in this sacred land, the crowning jewel of all monastics, the supremely victorious one, the great 14th Dalai Lama stands unparalleled. Throughout his life, he has showered his grace, his kindness upon all the subjects of Tibet with motherly compassion, supporting and nurturing them unconditionally. Particularly for Tibetan children, he has provided both traditional and modern educational opportunities, nurturing them like a lamp that dispels darkness and illuminating the path of wisdom. This token offering symbolizes our profound reverence and gratitude expressed through the three doors in remembrance of his boundless kindness. So this is written in Tibetan on the memorandum offered to His Holiness Dalai Lama.
Tuchina. DJ la Kundun zo Chek Chidun Gegab ki Shungsa Bacham ko Eliska Zigova Chone Sungshe Nangyu.
May I invite our chief guest, Dr. Eliska Zigova, the ambassador of the Czech Republic to India, to deliver her remarks.
Your Holiness, Honorable Sityo, Honorable Ministers of CTA, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It's my great honor to be with you today on this very special occasion and day of the celebrating 75th year of His Holiness, the Great 14th Dalai Lama, assumption of spiritual and temporal leadership of Tibetan nation and of the all Buddhist faith. Before I will start, I would like to little bit consider about what is it in fact leadership and what does it mean for us human beings. I believe you all will agree with me that we people need a good and real powerful good leadership. Even it is a family when parents are taking care of children and children under good leadership, loving and caring parents are thriving and prospering. Or it is school, a class where students under the guidance of a good teachers can study and can again prosper and learn a lot. Or even it's a nation or state. Even more important to have good, wise and well leadership to lead the nation, to lead the state. If we don't have this, if we don't have spiritual and also, let's say, political or parental or schooling leadership, we can go on the different, not always good path, and somehow we can see this in our world today, when the leadership in some places, in some corners of the world is failing. So it is even more important for us to be here today to celebrate such an extraordinary example, such an extraordinary spiritual and also temporal leadership of His Holiness, the Great 14th Dalai Lama. I was very touched by thanks which were given, the gratitude of all alumni. And I was thinking about the young Dalai Lama, 15 years old, in 1950, when he was taking responsibility for the nation, for his people, for such a difficult circumstances in those times. And only 9 years later, he crossed the border with India in exile, with 1,000 people following him, running away or leaving from the communist China invasion. And all these children, all these small souls who were following him were left, should be left behind or could be left behind, but no, this young man, only 19, 22 old, leader, spiritual and temporal leader of Tibetan people, started immediately in 1960 to found the schools, the homes for children, and now today we see the alumni of all the schools, and we see also the young students, the young children who are still studying in those schools. It's really, really amazing. I was really lucky to visit it April this year, the Tibetan Homes Foundation School in Mussoorie. And believe me, I was in awe seeing children, students. Not only were they very well educated, they were very well taken care of, but all of them speak fluent Tibetan, this is the third generation. It's really amazing. So I believe very much for the future of Tibetan nation, and I really pray for long life of the leader, of our spiritual leader. And let me say our, because it's not only yours, dear Tibetans, it's all over the world. Let me close my remark about one other very important event for me, like a Czech ambassador and for Czech nation, because 17th of November is also a very important day for Czech people. 17 November 1989, in Czechoslovakia, Velvet Revolution put down the communist regime after 40 years. So freedom came in very peaceful revolution. That is why it's called Velvet. And our leader, President Václav Havel, who was in those times kept in prison by communists, went out from the prison and he just straight to the presidential palace and he became the first Czechoslovak free president. And our President Václav Havel invited His Holiness because he felt that this leader is very important for his leadership. So these two leaders, Václav Havel, the president, political leadership, and 14 Dalai Lama, His Holiness, are our very important connection between Tibet and Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic. I hope very much in peace, I hope very much in freedom and prosperous all over being, lives, souls, and all our earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. DJ La, Pyogi Lugu Jobatante, Gave Zebakor Langwashe, Chiti Lakune, Patun Shubi, Chakdip Dingi, Kundun Zo Chone Unjenangu.
We request Ambassador Zigova to launch a book on Tibet's history and the legacy of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. The book is in Tibetan language, written by Lobsang Chimban Nampel Tsang and published by the Department of Information and International Relations, Central Tibetan Administration.
Chakdip Di Yimbena, Penden Kande Potan Yixangi Tungje, Nampel Tsang, Losang Jimbolaki, Jaksom Nawashik Dedu. Tuchina, DJ La Pemitikzuki, Yu Koden Kodik Sokjunki, Zozo, Kadung Chuga Dangi, Tsege Lane, Tujichu Sungshe Nangu.
I request Tegel Chugatanyi, Kashak Secretary, and the Chairman of the Central Koden Organizing Committee, Central Tibetan Administration, to deliver the vote of thanks.
제국의 투지치 슈 레림년산 슈야라 하다 제베 조아 용기 겸내 직대시대 대변치 랑자 강제바 남기 나남베베 우지 진호 공사 겸근 개회 원고 탐제 kin지 시고 진보초 티링기 제국의 초근도 샵소까지 신앙 진기 남나 제바 그베 소주 담아
With hands folded, I would like to thank His Holiness the Dalai Lama on behalf of all the Tibetans and all our guests gathered here for gracing this occasion. I would like to thank the Tibetan Sikong political leadership as well as the speaker for the statements. And also would like to thank all our guests, including our chief guest, for attending this celebration. And would like to thank all those who have worked hard, including the staff members of CTA for arranging the stage and everything else for this celebration. And then I would like to say a few words in English.
Of celebrating the 75th anniversary of His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama's assumption of spiritual and temporal leadership of Tibet, it is my profound honor and joy to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing committee. First and foremost, our deepest gratitude goes to His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama. Your Holiness, we are profoundly blessed by your gracious presence today and by the boundless compassion, guidance, and wisdom you continue to offer to the Tibetan people and to all humanity. Your blessings have made this celebration truly meaningful, and we offer our heartfelt thanks. We extend our sincere appreciation to our chief guest, Her Excellency Dr. Eliska Zygova, Ambassador of the Czech Republic to India, for honoring us with your presence and your inspiring and encouraging speech. Your support for His Holiness' lifelong vision and for our community is deeply valued. Our heartfelt thanks also goes to the Honorable Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in exile and Honorable Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration. Your thoughtful and uplifting speeches have strengthened our spirit, unity, and dedication as we reflect on this historic milestone of Tibetan leadership. We also extend warm gratitude to all the distinguished guests and dignitaries of the CTA for attending this program. Your presence adds honor and significance to today's celebration. A special thank you goes to the CTA staff led by the respective secretaries for your tireless coordination, administrative support, and commitment in ensuring the smooth execution of today's event. Your dedication is deeply appreciated. We also express heartfelt appreciation to the alumni of Tibetan schools in India, Nepal, and Bhutan for your offerings of traditional sweet rice, butter tea, and sweets. Your contribution has enriched today's celebration with warmth, culture, and devotion. Our sincere thanks also goes to the media personnel who have worked diligently to cover and document this important occasion. Your efforts help us share this meaningful day with communities near and far. Finally, we extend our deepest gratitude to the committee members and all those working quietly behind the scenes. Your hard work, commitment, and teamwork are the foundation upon which this successful celebration stands. To everyone gathered here, thank you for your presence, your support, and your prayer. With profound respect and gratitude, thank you all. Tashidilai.
Di samne taringi shungje jego gege ngani dubai chino konskam gyon chimbucho shuga gebe podang la ya chipkyu dubai je la ngaran so shina tapte mutune unzu shugi lhinge mutune shuron na shwe.
Remembering the boundless compassion and kindness of His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama, and with fervent prayers for His Holiness's long and healthy life, we conclude the official gathering here, while the celebration will continue with more cultural programs. As His Holiness leaves for the residence, we request the audience to remain seated for the cultural performances that will follow. Thank you.
5